That Mr. Anthony is going to be sharing with us this morning with respect to our ministry callings and opportunities. We're in day 2 now of our series in our Bible Conference 2018 with the theme Here, There, and Everywhere. And today we're going to be looking at the here. Yesterday we were introduced to the whole idea by Pastor Sartorelli, giving us a good overview. Does anybody remember what his main concept was yesterday? That Christians should what? All right, not stay put. Okay. Everybody have a card almost yet? I want to wait until that's done and we'll have a word of prayer. You have 2, Kyle. That's okay. All right, everybody, now it's time to focus. Let's pray, and I'll introduce our guest. Father in heaven, Lord, as we begin another day of our Bible conference this year, we thank you so much for the servants who have taken time out from their busy week to come and to share what you've put in their hearts, what you've led them to in their lives, what you have called them to do for your kingdom. And so, Lord, as we often do remember, your kingdom is on this world as well as in heaven. May it be that this will for your kingdom on earth is as in heaven. And so help us to see the upward calling, the outward performing, and the inward necessity of a transformed heart and soul. And as we do this today, we ask, God, that you would oversee all this with your Holy Spirit and guide the thinking of the students and the speech of the teacher here, our friend, Brother Anthony. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. And without any further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Dennis Anthony. He's the director and founder of the Friends of Recovery, and he's going to tell us about a unique ministry that God has given him.
Can everybody hear me? First of all, thank you for the opportunity to come and speak. And I talk with my hands, and so you'll have to bear with me. But thank you. I'm what they call a homeland missionary. I'm not overseas, I'm home here. And I'll explain what that means as we get going. But it's, Mr. Snook, one of the things he mentioned is about, as Christians, us moving and being ready to move. And for me, as I'm going to share my journey from where I started to where I am here today, you're going to see that it requires movement and being open to the leading of the Spirit. So, my life verse, and the one that I live by is, and the other thing, the Bible's in front of you. I want you guys to be looking stuff up, verifying what I'm referring to, just to double check me. Psalm 37:5. Commit everything you do to the Lord, trust him, and he will help you. Committing is difficult. Him helping us is a promise. It's the center part that's hard. It's the trusting him. We have to trust him. So, this past week, I had an opportunity. My daughter is Grace, for those of you that don't know that. She's in the front. And my beautiful wife is also in the front. That's our ministry team. And in a conversation I had with Grace last week, she threw a question at me. And I thought about it, and I thought that'd be a great way to lead into this. So, have you guys ever asked yourself, what do you want to be when you grow up? What am I going to do with my life? What am I going to do for the rest of my life? Anybody ever thought that? We're going to be interactive here. So, yes, okay. Personally, I believe this approach with what am I going to do, what am I, is a little too self-focused. You guys know all about selfies. So it's like a selfie perspective. It's like looking into your phone and saying, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? We need to switch that up a little. We should be asking God, what's his plan for your life? It's difficult, especially at you guys' age. I understand that. You're going to see some humor about me. So, back when I was in junior high, which is now middle school, so this is a long time ago, 9th grade, which is now high school for you guys, but for us it was junior high. We were the big dogs in the school at 9th grade. Anyway, I got called into the guidance office. And one of the things they did was they brought you in ninth grade, and they asked you, and this is what she asked me, what do you want to do with your life? I'm in ninth grade. And so my response to her was, you mean like, do I want to be an astronaut or a firefighter or a police officer or a cowboy, one of those things? And she just stared at me and smiled. And, and then she didn't say anything. So I shrugged my shoulders. I said, I have no clue. So then her next question to me was, what are your favorite subjects? So she was going to try to guide me into high school, into a path, into what interests me. So I told her my favorite subjects were gym and lunch. And interestingly, at that point, missionary work wasn't even on my radar. It was the furthest thing from my mind. So today, let's pretend for a second that I call you guys into the office, the guidance office, and I'm going to ask you these questions. Just think about these for a minute. What's your purpose in life? Why are you here? Not here, here. Why are you here? Do you have a plan? Does anybody have a plan for the rest of their life today? Okay? Most of us don't, and that's okay. That's okay. Because honestly, if you had a plan, as you're going to see as I talk further into this, it usually doesn't end up that way. So, I want us all today, just for a few moments in this little bit of time we have together, I want you guys to all think about a purpose and a plan for your life. Okay? So, the way I see it in life, we have two options. We can either go at it alone and trudge our way through life, doing it our way, which I did, which was a bad choice, by the way, which I did for first 35 years of my life. What's interesting about that is you do that, a lot of people do that, you're going to fumble and bumble your way through life. Yes, you may get through life, but there's not a lot of joy, peace, happiness, and love. Or we have option number two. We can ask God to help us. We can humbly surrender to His love and His will for our lives. Now, what's interesting about that is if you do that, that doesn't eliminate hardships and anguish and troubles in your life. It does not at all. But what it does do is it gives you the strength, it gives you peace, and it gives you joy working through those things. So those are the two options, and I just wanted to share that number one is the one I did for 35 years. You're going to hear it over and over and over. God has a purpose and a plan for each one of us, every single one of you, everybody in this school. He created us all for a purpose and a reason. We need to explore that, and the best that we can, get on that path for that purpose and plan. 2 Timothy 1:9. Somebody wants to look it up. For God saved us and called us to a holy life. He did this not because we deserved it, but because that was His plan from before the beginning of time to show us His grace through Christ Jesus. How many people, raise your hand, how many people believe that Jesus loves them no matter what they've done so far in their life? Good. Again, remember you have a purpose. Will you go it alone, path I took, or will you seek Him and His leading through your life? Okay. How many people know exactly the profession or career they want to do when they leave school? They got it all figured out. Okay. So let's just say 20 of you. And if I were to guess, we check back with you guys in 10 years, and probably 18 of you are not going to be doing those things. It's good to have a plan, but so I wanted to share some purpose and plan helpers to help you think about your purpose and your plan, because I believe most people struggle with what's my purpose in life. And it's okay to say that. So what I wanted to share was, what parts of your life, job or work, do you enjoy doing the most? Who has a job? Okay. I'll pick on somebody in the front row. What's your job?
I work at Chick-fil-A.
She works at Chick-fil-A. And there's got to be a good part of your job. What's your favorite part of your job? What do you enjoy the most? Don't say eating. Say.
I mean, like, I like cash register.
You like what?
I like talking to people.
Great example. She likes talking to people. Me, I like communicating with people as well. What I learned early on, way back, even as far as I can remember, I like to help people. And I was just a little kid, but I like to help people. I like to have interactions with people. People, as you guys know, like to talk. So it's okay to communicate with them. We don't do that much anymore because we do this, but face to face. So great example. What part or parts get you fired up? Ask yourself why. Is it because you're helping, serving, building something for someone? What in your life gets you fired up? You love to do it. You put other things aside and you go and you focus on that thing or helping that. And then when it's all done, you're like, wow, that felt pretty good. Remember those things. Because what fires you up may be exactly what you're passionate about. And I want you to think about what you're passionate about. This passion may be what God has planned for you from the beginning. And I shared my example of me being a helper. Have I always wanted to be a missionary? Absolutely not. If you would have asked me 10 years ago, I would have said, what is a missionary? Oh yeah, they're overseas, they're in Africa, Brazil, they're all those places. No way do I want to leave. So, now to some silly things. What I noticed that, now looking back, when I started high school is when God began molding me for my missionary journey. Start of high school, remember, junior high, gym and lunch were my favorite subjects. Start high school, my senior year, okay? Now I'm going into high school, my senior year. Grades, schoolwork, way down there on my priority list. I enter 12th grade with the knowledge that I like to help people. That's a cool thing. I like to help people. And especially I like to help children. So I come up with this brilliant plan as a high school senior that I'm going to become a pediatrician. How hard can it be? I really that's what I'm passionate about, helping people. So at this point, senior in high school, my favorite subjects have changed a little bit. It's lunch, sports, now girls. So majoring in those three things is not going to get you very far in life. So I applied every college as a senior. Every college known to man, I applied. Guess how many letters I got back, acceptance letters? 0. My brilliant plan has fallen apart. I wanted to be a pediatrician, and I thought everybody, because I was so enthusiastic, was going to embrace it. Didn't happen. Two glaring reasons. My GPA, terrible. I had a GPA, but it was terrible. My ACT score, if you could have failed the ACT, I failed it. But here I was holding on to this idea that, how hard can it be? So, I didn't go to college. I didn't become a pediatrician. Change of plans. So after high school, I do what a lot of people do. I get a minimum wage job. And then my focus in life is working, because that's what you need to do to survive. And I don't want to live with my mother forever. So I read a newspaper article, and it says, part-time firefighters in a community right next door to where I lived, part-time firefighters wanted. And it sparked my interest. Be very careful with the things when you're doing something and you hear something and you're not totally focused. All of a sudden it's like, whoa, that's pretty interesting. Because God may be trying to talk to you. So anyway, I read this article. It says, come down, apply. You don't need any experience. And I'm like, that would be cool. I could go there, help people, and get paid. Sweet. So I go there. God leads me there. I go there. I apply. I get hired. Me, I get hired with horrible grades. So, at 25 years old, I entered the fire service as a career. And what was cool about this was I got to break things, I got to burn things, I got to drive cool trucks, and I got to wear a really cool uniform. And guess what, guys? The girls really dig a man in uniform. So I had the best of everything. So it was a cool job. So, 10 years I was in the fire service. 10 years. And then everything changed. I accepted Christ at 35. Now, to say that he turned me upside down and my life completely flipped upside down is an absolute understatement. 35 years old, all of a sudden, God has opened my eyes and my heart to things that I didn't even know existed. And all of a sudden, what I was doing took on whole new meaning. So, over time, my life began to change. As yours, if you haven't accepted Christ, when you do, your life will radically change for the best. Over time, my life began to change as my relationship with Jesus grew closer. I learned to respect myself. I learned to respect my brothers and sisters in the fire service. I accepted responsibility for my actions and became someone who could be counted on. But one of the most important things is I began to develop healthy relationships. We all need healthy relationships. But the most important relationship that I developed was the one with Jesus. Because that relationship I can take anywhere I go. No matter what I do, wherever I end up, Jesus is there with you. So my life began to change. What was neat in the fire service, what I experienced was, see, everybody knew me from before. Well, now that I was beginning to change, you guys hear about persecution, that kind of thing. Man, did I experience that. Because I went from being one of we call it one of the guys or one of the gals in the fire service, which is pretty rough living, to all of a sudden not doing that stuff anymore. And started reading my Bible at the firehouse. It's unheard of. So I experienced early on, to me it was severe. To some missionaries it was nothing. But I had a plan. Once I got in the fire service, I was going right to the top. I was going to be chief. I thought that's what everybody did. And so I started on that journey, and by golly, I was going to be chief. Well, because I was now a Christian, that changed everything. How I interacted with people. And it wasn't all bad. My evaluations, I got marked down because I was reading my Bible at nighttime when I should have been, they thought, doing something else. That was okay. What was the cool part about that was at nighttime, people were coming to me. And they were like, hey, can we talk? And we'd go in another room and shut the door. And they're like, I'm really struggling. My mom's sick or my dad's sick or I'm struggling in my marriage. I'm struggling. And we would talk. And I had people that would come to me and say, man, I heard this rock song. And somebody said it came out of Leviticus or something. And I would say, really? Oh, and they said, do you have a Bible? And I'm like, yeah. And I go to my Bible, and we're going through the Bible with a guy that never even opened a Bible before. It was awesome. There was bad, but there was great. It was great. So, one of the really cool things I did was our church did a 40-day revolution. This just, if people didn't know I was a Christian, everybody knew after this. What 40-day revolution was, you had a schematic thing, and you were to draw your neighbors' houses on this thing, and every day for 40 days you were supposed to do something kind, a random act of kindness to your neighbors. Well, I looked at it and thought, I'm not doing that with my neighbors. I'm going to do it with the fire department. So I took and I drew a locker room, and everybody's locker, because we were in a rectangle. I put everybody's name on a locker. So every day I did something similar to what they asked in the 40-day revolution. So I was going to people that didn't like me and didn't like what I believed and how I lived, and I was going to them and asking them if there was anything I could pray with them about or pray for them about. And what was interesting was some of the people wouldn't even talk to me normally. So here I am, I'm going to them, and I'm like knocking on their door. I was wondering, is there something that I could pray for you about? And the people that I thought were going to slam the doors or throw things at me, those were the ones that usually said, tears would come down in their eyes. They'd put their arm on my shoulder and they'd say, you know, my dad's about to pass away and I'm really struggling. And just thing after thing. So then I'd go to my chart and I would write, prayed for father, or pray for father, or mother, or whatever. Cool. By the end of the time, I had the whole thing filled up. It was really neat. And that just opened the floodgates. So, sadly, like most of us, as things started to go well, I regained control. My focus was off of Jesus, and it was on me, because I was doing things so well. Be careful, be careful, be careful with that. So, 10 years I fought for a chaplain in the fire department because I saw the benefits of spiritual leadership in a firehouse that never had it. 10 years. And at the end of that 10th year, the chief comes to me and says, 10 years I'd been preaching about the need. The chief comes to me and he says, Dennis, he goes, we were at a council meeting today and I came up with this idea. Let's implement a chaplain in the fire department. I think it'd be a great idea. And I was like, he goes, what do you think? I said, wonderful, wonderful idea, chief. Let's go with it. I was 45, I'm sorry, at 45. Now what that gave me, it gave me the ability to talk to anybody in the city about spiritual needs, conditions, all that. It was wonderful. Unfortunately, that was at 45. At 46, I had a routine operation and I got sick. And I was told, now mind you, I got my whole plan. I'm going to be chief. We were going to buy a piece of property. We were going to live there, or live at our house, buy the piece of property. I was going to be chief in X amount of years, and we had our whole life planned out. Grace was going to graduate from school. We were going to move. We had everything all planned out. I go in for this operation. I come out. I go back to work. Not even a 24-hour shift. We were 24 on, 48 off. 8 o'clock at night, 12 hours into my shift. I'm an officer, all by myself at the station, and the other firefighters were there, but I mean, officer-wise, I was the only one. And my leg was hurting, and I was like, oh, man, it's been a busy day. We were a very busy firehouse. And I pull my pant leg up, and wow, my leg was all swollen. It was hot, and I had thrown a blood clot. So, long story short, I call my doctor. I go in the next morning. I get diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder. And the doctor says the fatal words, you can't go back to work. And I'm like, what do you mean? That's all I know. It's all I know. 22 years I was in the fire service. So, we had just had a new house. We had Grace here at Cornerstone. And I was going to lose my job. So, we came back to Psalm 37:5. Commit everything you do to the Lord. Trust him, and he will help you. And he has over and over and over for us. So, curveball, just like Mr. Schnook said. It was time for me to move. I didn't want to move. I did everything I could to stay in the fire service. I wanted to be an assistant chief. I wanted to be a chief. I wanted to... No. You can't do anything physical, they said. So, by God's mercy and grace, I was already counseling in the fire service. He told me, become a counselor. I don't work with sharp objects anymore, because I'm not allowed to. Become a counselor. Awesome. So, during my time in the fire service, I was able to obtain undergrad degree and associate degree. So I was able to go right into graduate school and become a counselor. What was cool about that was first day when we started, I went to Malone. First day we started at Malone, you stand up in front of your class, which you graduate with. So you go through whatever it was, 3 years of school. I stand up in front of the class and I say, everybody, I'm Anthony, so you get to go first. And so I stand up and I say, this is what I'm not going to do with my counseling degree. I am not going to work with adolescents, which is 12 to 25s, and I'm not going to do addictions. And the reason why I said that was when my beautiful wife and I got married, we blended two families, which a lot of you are familiar with. The blending of those two families was rough, and our kids put us through the ringer. So I didn't want to work with adolescents. I didn't want anything to do with any more kids or families. I'd had enough. And sadly, one of our sons was addicted to drugs and alcohol. And when I say addicted, it completely devastated our family. So that's the proclamation I made to God. And I was telling Mr. Snook before we started, be careful when you tell God what you're not going to do. Because chances are you're going to end up doing it. So I told my class I'm not doing it, I'm not doing it. Okay, I go through college, I graduate. Prior to graduation, we stand up in front of that same class and we say what we're doing now, because everybody's hired, all that kind of stuff. So I stand up, and my teacher starts laughing, my professor, because she knows what I'm about to say. And because they help you, with your internship and all those things. And so she knew exactly what I was doing. So I get up there in front of the class, and she says, Mr. Anthony, she goes, what are you doing? Where are you working now? I said, well, I'm working at a counseling agency. And she said, that's great. She goes, what kind of counseling are you doing? And I said, adolescents and drugs and alcohol. I didn't want to go there, but that's where God moved me. And I'll tell you, being passionate about kids when I was little, it doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. So, I graduated. I counseled. I loved it. I loved it. I loved working with your age group. I loved seeing change. I loved sharing my life experience. I knew part of it, that's what I should be doing. But it didn't feel right. I was in an agency where when I got hired, they told me, this and what you believe stays in your car. Don't share it with your clients. Everybody's a client. And I said, okay, do I still get the job? If I say okay, and they said yes. I said, okay. Well, that's when the wrestling match with God and I began. What I saw as a dad, as a trained clinician, was in the line of work I'm in, which is recovery work, addictions, remaining sober is very important for your health and your well-being. That's important, but it's about this important in your life. The relationship with Jesus, who wherever you go in life, whether it's Alaska, Timbuktu, wherever, he will never leave you. So the frustration I had, I would walk alongside a teen for 12, 18 months. We would do great work. I was not a tremendous counselor, but we would do great work together. They would remain sober. Things were good on paper, but I couldn't share what they really needed. So they would leave, they would get back into life, and the relapse rate is terrible, 90-something%. So it was very frustrating for me. So I began this wrestling with God. And what was interesting was I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I was doing. I knew I was counseling, and counseling work's very hectic, and one person after another, and I kept saying, man, I want to go to the Bible, and this is where you need, and I couldn't. The only time I could say something is if somebody else brought it up. And that was very rare. So, here's what happened. I thought, I'm gonna go for this promotion. I get hired just like in the fire service. I'm going to go all the way top. I want this promotion. I want to run my department. I want to run it because then I'll feel better about it. The wrongness I was feeling will become rightness. So, guess what? I get a promotion. I get a big, huge office. Now I'm in charge of the whole department. And the very first day I walked in the office, I shut the door, and it felt totally wrong. The counseling, working with adolescents, and people is right, but not being able to share the good news of Jesus Christ was wrong to me. So, I struggled and I struggled. And then, if you guys want to turn to Matthew 14:24, this is what I was experiencing. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them, walking on the water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost!" But Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage. I am here." Then Peter called to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you, walking on the water." "Yes, come," Jesus said. So Peter went out over the side of the boat and walked on the water towards Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. That's what I was experiencing. I would take a step, I would throw my foot over the boat, it would touch the water, and as long as I didn't have to step on the water, things were okay. I was comfortable. But my wrestling with God, what he showed me was I needed to leap out of the boat, trusting him. So, what I did was I said, okay, as God was speaking to me, and this wasn't an audible thing. I don't want you guys to think that I heard this. I woke up from a dream is how I heard this. And I thought he said he wanted me to cut my hours at the agency. So I go to work. I tell my wife, I go to work. I go to my supervisor, hey, I'm cutting my hours. As a counselor, you don't do that. They want you to do more hours. So I went there and I said, I'm cutting my hours in half from 40 to 20. And my supervisor, she said, wow, nobody's ever done that. And I said, okay, that's what I'm doing. Well, I did that. It was still wrong. I went back to work, and now I'm working 20 hours, but the same wrongness was still there. So that's my 1 foot out. So then, not even a week later, I get an invite. The invite says, a phone call, person says, hey, somebody couldn't make it, so they gave me your name. I don't know you. Would you want to come for a free Cracker Barrel meal? And I said, Cracker Barrel is at the top of our street. I said, sure. What do I got to do? All you got to do is listen to a presentation. Awesome. Free food? I'll go. So I go there. I listen to the presentation. I order my meal. It wasn't free. I had to pay for it. But I listened to the presentation. But what I hear in the presentation is people from an organization called Friends of Recovery Incorporated from Indiana. And they've got this idea of taking ministry, the love of Jesus, and sharing it with people that are struggling with addictions. And I'm like, hello? That's what I want to do. So I put my name on the thing. Interested. So from that point on, we started meeting weekly. There was three total, 2 other people that were interested in seeing what this ministry was about or doing something similar. So we started meeting on a weekly basis. Mind you, I got 1 foot out in the water. So we go to the meeting, this one Friday in particular. I didn't work on Fridays. So we go to this meeting. In this meeting, we decide, because these other 2 people are business people. They have no time to run a ministry. And I was too busy, I thought, too. So we have this meeting, we say, you know what, by golly, we need to get somebody in here that's going to be the face of this ministry, that's going to take it, it's going to develop it, and they're going to have no money to do it, and they're going to have no helpers. And I kid you not, I said, man, I pity that poor sap that we find or that God brings. So we start praying on it. Well, you can hear the water splashing. 3 days later, a prayer, and I wake up and I jumped. God wanted me out of the boat. So when I woke up, I shared with my wife. I said, I believe God has spoken to me again. And she's like, oh boy. She sat down and said, okay, let's hear it. And I said, I believe he wants me to quit the agency and accept a call into Friends of Recovery. Permanently. And she's like, your paycheck, we need the paycheck. So I leaped onto the water, trusting him. And guess what? I didn't sink. It gets scary at times, but I didn't sink. So I go back to work. Week later, from me cutting my hours, I go back to work and I asked for another meeting with my supervisor, and I said, thank you so much for cutting my hours in half. I'm resigning. And she was like, nobody resigns from the agency. You got a whole caseload. Blah, blah, blah. I said, I'm leaving. She was not a believer, but I did share. I said, I feel a call to full-time ministry. So, movement. I moved. I left my job. So, again, be careful what you tell God you're not going to do, because you'll find yourself doing it. So, I'm out of the boat. I leave my job. I accept Friends of Recovery. If you could put that picture up. This is our logo. This logo is very important because we're a recovery ministry. What I'm going to do as a homeland missionary, my calling by God is for as long as I'm alive, for the rest of my life, I'm committed to being a missionary. Thankfully, he's keeping me here because this is where I want to stay. I want to stay here because we have an immediate need all around us. Not that I wouldn't have gone, but I felt strongly here. Yes, there's issues, drugs and substance issues all over the world, but here, we need it here. And so that's why I'm here. Anyway, this logo, real quick. It's a home. We run recovery homes. I'll talk about those in a second. But this is very symbolic. That door requires you, as the person stepping into recovery, to open the door, not anybody else. You got to open that door, do the work, and step into what is supposed to be good, nice. And then, of course, be showered with the love of Jesus on the other side. So that's our logo. Before you go to another picture, let me just share our mission statement. Provide Christ-centered recovery homes offering hope, healing, and restoration for individuals recovering from addictive substances. Hope, healing, and restoration. It's nothing fancy that I do. It's everything that he did on the cross. That's what I share with them. Because what I tell them is no matter where you've been, what you've done, how bad you've messed up your life, and it's train wrecks, he's there with open arms. But you've got to jump in those arms. A recovery home is a place where people learn how to do life without drugs and alcohol. We have an opportunity to grow. The people that stay with us have an opportunity to grow in their recovery. They learn that Jesus loves them no matter how bad they mess their lives up. They learn that Christ can and will set them free from their addiction. He is the only thing that will set them free from their addiction. And they learn that God created them for a purpose and he has a plan for them. Most importantly, they learn they have potential. Every one of us in this room, we have potential. Even if you feel like your life, you have no hope, or you don't know what you're going to do, you have potential. Don't ignore that. And by God's grace, these men now, women soon, discover their meaning, purpose, and potential that he has for them. We currently have, you can start the other slides. Okay, we'll turn our heads to the side. That's Tikva Home for Men. That's in Willoughby. Tikva is Hebrew for hope. We're doing a women's house, a ruka, which is healing and restoration in Hebrew. Okay, you can go to the next one. Okay, these are the men, the men that live at Tikva at the time of the picture. That's inside the house. It's going up the stairway. Okay, next picture. Okay, anybody recognize those guys? I love this picture because I don't know that gentleman's name second to the left, but sun's out, guns out. Love that shirt. These guys came to the house last year. Before we opened, you can show another picture. And what was cool about this was they came to the house and they didn't know what they were doing. We had 3 pallets of super heavy, each one of those Gabe's carrying 2 bundles. They were like 50 pounds each. So they show up at the house and they thought they were gonna move some boxes. They had 3 pallets, it was great. So they walked up and they were in their uniforms, they looked great. And it was a rainy, yucky day. And I told them, I said, you know what guys, you probably should take your shirts off because they gotta go back to school. I said, because we got a lot of stuff to move. No, not a problem. So as you can see, they started with 2 bundles each. You can go to another one. This is what you can see. They're sitting on one of the pallets. You can go to another one. Is there any more? Okay, all right. So, that was funny because they came there, they had no idea. But they came and they served. And probably after about 2 loads, they had to go all the way upstairs. About 2 loads in, they all had their shirts off. They were sweating. It was great. So, what I want, as I close this, I want you guys real quick, grab your piece of paper that you had, your card, and a pen. And we're going to go through this this is how we're going to close. Everybody got it? Okay. I want you on your paper, draw a triangle. A big triangle because we're going to write on it. Okay, we got our triangle. In the middle of that triangle, put a cross. Big old cross in there. And don't you dare doodle on that cross. Leave it empty. Don't put anybody back on the cross, or that cross is to remain empty. Okay, now, left side of the triangle. To me, these are the qualities of a missionary and Christian character qualities. Okay, left side, respect. Right respect. And as we know, a triangle, the strongest geometric shape, as long as all 3 sides are together. Take one of those sides out and it's going to crumble. So, respect, left-hand side. I promise you follow these principles and you will live a rock-solid Christian life. Okay? For yourselves and for the kingdom. Respect. Learn to be respectful. Respect yourselves, respect your family, respect your school, your community, wherever you go. Respect. Right side of the triangle. Accountability, responsibility. You accept responsibility and be held accountable for your actions and behaviors is a very good thing. Many people in our society don't assume responsibility for their actions. Be responsible and accountable. Again, to yourself, to your family, to your church, to your school, to the community. Okay, the bottom one, relationship. Develop healthy relationships. Which relationship should be the one you pour most of your energy into? With God, as he said. That is the most important relationship you have in your life, with Jesus. Now, in the lower left-hand corner, write a G. Inside the top, where they come together, write an O. On the right, write a D. He will hold that triangle together. All right. For me, in my journey, as God has moved me in places I never thought I would ever go, it has not been easy. It has been challenging, and it has been downright scary, just as Peter experienced. But my hope is in Jesus. And no matter what happens, that's where I'm turning. And that's where I suggest you do the same. So you can take that triangle thing. What I wanted to do for the last few minutes is to answer questions. Now, I know somebody's got to have questions. Anybody have a question they want to ask me? If not, I'm going to throw some stuff out there.
How did you find out about, like, before you became a believer,
Who led me to become a believer?
Yeah, like, how did you find out about it?
Well, I was going to church, but I wasn't a believer. And I was coming here a long time ago, and my wife drugged me into a Bible study upstairs. And I didn't want to be here, and I sat in the back of the room, and the pastor says, we're going to get in groups, and we're going to pray for one another. And I was like, not me. Not me. And so I ended up in a group, and my head was up, everybody else's head was down, they were all praying, and I thought, this is really, really weird. I don't know, it was maybe 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, I was then bowing my head. I was not a believer yet, but it was a gradual process. And I will say my life, I had a big storm cloud over my head of a lot of childhood issues that were weighing me down. Unforgiveness, bitterness, hatred. My heart was full of yuck. And I was driven to a place in my life where I surrendered. I said, God, I can't do this. And he came in, and the very first thing was make amends with people. And as I started that process, but you got to continue a relationship with Jesus. It's not like a one-time thing, and then you go off living like the world again, and you've got to continue in that relationship. So it's been a process for me, but that's how it started. Anybody else? What happened to my son after? He is, end of this month, will be 5 years clean. So, yeah. And it's nothing that I did, okay? It was nothing I did, even though I'm a trained professional and I have a son that's struggling with alcohol and drugs, when you would have thought I would have been able to straighten him right out. That didn't happen. He sought treatment and got in treatment and has remained drug and alcohol free to today. So, which is a motivation for me to continue to do what I do. Anybody else?
What's your favorite part about working in ministry?
My favorite part about working where?
Like, just in the ministry at all.
You know, it goes back to what I started with, working with people and helping people. That's what, I talked about getting fired up. That's what gets me fired up. Because I get to meet with the guys all the time. We sit down, we do long sessions together. I help coach them in their lives, where they're going. But that's still what gets me fired up, is to share with somebody, you've got potential, and all you've got to do is do the work and coach them. And that's, for me, that's what motivates me. Anybody else? We have a few more minutes.
How do you decide which men get into your home? What's the application process?
Great question. We are, as I stated, a Christ-centered home. So there aren't many of those. And what that means is we share Jesus with them right from the beginning. And we don't like get funding from any place, like the government or anything, so that we can share from the very beginning that you have to go to church. One of the things that we require is you go to church. Not only do you go to church, you got to take notes, because then you got to present what you learned to the guys in the house. We meet once a week over that. We interview them. It's a long interview process. The last kid we interviewed, it was 5 hours of interviews. And depending on the circumstances, sometimes we meet with the parents. If they're a younger adult, if it's an older person, we don't. But it's a long process. What they have to demonstrate is that they're bought into changing, that they're bought into, that they are actually working a recovery program. And so then after they go through the interviews, we have their last interview is with the other guys that live in the house. We sit down and we have a dialogue. and then we invite them in. They can stay with us for as long as they want. My focus with this ministry is the first 3 years after someone finishes a treatment program. That is the highest relapse rate, first 3 years out. Because what happens is you come out, you have what you learned. They give you a booklet, you've got all this stuff, it's all up here. And then you step out into life, and then your girlfriend leaves you, your boyfriend leaves you, there's a death, you lose your job, whatever, and life squeezes you, and we go right back to what our comfort was. And so our ministry is the first 3 years, so they can live with us as long as they want. Some people transition out earlier, others, we haven't been open, we opened last June. So we still have 2 of the guys that we opened with that are still living with us. And it's a home. It's not a place, a hospital. We don't do any recovery, we don't do any treatment, we're not a rehab, we're not a detox, we're not any of those things. We are a home. There's one kitchen, we eat together, we watch TV together, watch football games, we clean the house together. We do family stuff. And that's where the strength is. And if I'm struggling, the other guys in the house know I'm struggling. And they come alongside me. Or if they're struggling, we come alongside one another. We support one another. Any other questions?
How often are you there? Because you have a family and your job. How often are you able to spend time?
How often am I there? A lot more often than my wife would like. But there is a house manager that runs the house. I have an office there. I run the ministry, Friends of Recovery Ministry, because we're doing 6 homes in Lake County total. So I'm very busy with doing that. So I have an office at the house. So I'm there Monday through Friday, usually till 5 o'clock every day. And then the house manager lives there, and him and I work together. And he does the after hours things, or sometimes during the day, or because I'm constantly going and coming and going. So. What's that?
What's the place named again?
The place, the name? Tikva Home for Men. Nobody asked me a question about pay. When you guys are looking for a job, aren't you concerned about how much you get paid? I knew you're. Guess what? You know what the salary is of a missionary? You don't think there's an hourly rate? Like if you become a missionary, you can say, I deserve $25 an hour? You know what it is? 0. Just as Jesus sacrificed on the cross, that's what a missionary does every day. It's sacrificial living for others. Now, you can get support, is how missionaries survive. A church will support you, or an individual will support you. But you don't go into missionary work for the money. But that's not why you're doing it. So, thought I'd throw that out there. Anybody else? All right. That's it. Thank you so much for being so attentive. Thank you.